All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to our Young Alumni Career Panel. My name is Carlene Palante. I'm Director of Career Planning at Sage. And also Amanda Shaw is here on the line. If you could wave Amanda, she's our Associate Director. And we're so excited that you're here to see our alumni that are joining us and to hear about their careers and also their time at Sage. So just a few Zoom tips before we get started. Like I said, if you could turn your video off if you're a student, unless you're asking a question or if you're speaking, and feel free to type questions in the chat or raise your hand and I'll call on you to unmute yourself. To have the best experience doing this, often looking just at the speaker view is the best way to do it. And I have about 5 questions that I'm going to ask our panelists, and then the floor is going to be open for students to ask their questions. So if you, we often talk about in our office, and if you are an RC 101 student, this is Occupational Wellness Week. So we've been talking a lot about exploring different careers, finding a career that fits your skills, your personality, your values, and your passion. And one of the best ways to do that is to educate yourself on different industries and talking to professionals, and in particular, alumni that were once this age and once in your shoes on a very similar path. So tonight is your chance to ask questions, connect with our alums, to not only explore careers, but also ask their advice. And we would love to have you ask questions because we're actually going to be giving away, if you can see this, 3 of these Sage awesome insulated mugs to students that ask questions. So we're going to randomly select people that might chat something in the chat box, ask a question, or unmute themselves, and we'll be picking those. Tomorrow, you'll get an email from us to let you know. So we really encourage you to ask questions. If you want to follow up with any of the alums after the event, please chat with them individually or take down their information in the chat. Some of our alums will be sharing their email addresses and information in the chat box. And I just wanted to say before we get started, thank you to our RC 101 faculty for getting this event off the ground and helping us to collaborate, and also our alumni relations team who really helped us with this event. So, so without further ado, I'd like to have our alums introduce themselves, and if they could state their name, their major at Sage, when they graduated, and their job title now, and where they work, and a little bit about what you do. So, Angela, you want to get started for us?
Sure, that'd be great. Hi, I'm Angela Doan. I graduated from Sage in 2010. I work for Architecture Plus in Troy, New York. I'm an interior designer there. I've been with them for about 7 years now. We, as an architecture firm, we work primarily on projects that are higher ed. We actually did the library on the Albany campus. And we also work on behavioral health projects. So we work on a lot of psych hospitals in New York State and also throughout the nation.
Great, great. Kim.
Hi everyone, I'm Kim Wallace. I graduated from Sage in 2010. My major was Law and Society. I'm currently an attorney. I have a few different jobs. I work for Albany County for their public defender's office, and I have my own firm, Wallace Turner Law, where I'm a partner, and I'm actually teaching a course on the Albany campus as well. So my day-to-day, pretty busy, pretty long days. I do criminal work, trial, And outside of that, I do a lot of real estate, estate planning. So kind of full service. And I'm teaching a course called The Role of a Public Defender, which is pretty much my life. So yeah, so I look forward to, getting questions and going from there.
Thanks, Kim. Anthony.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Williamson. I graduated in 2016 with my undergraduate in business, and then in 2018 with my master's in business. Currently, I work for Novartis Pharmaceuticals. My official job title is HCP, product manager for HCP marketing of the S1P orals. So essentially what I do is I work on the marketing function in a pharmaceutical company. We promote 2 drugs that are for multiple sclerosis. So I work with the other members of my brand team, as well as all of our cross-functional partners, to market and sell our 2 products.
Thanks. Kayla.
Hi, I'm Kayla. I graduated in 2016 with my bachelor's in nursing. I currently live and work in Rochester, New York. I work in an emergency department here as a nurse, and I also work as a sexual assault nurse examiner. And I am back at Sage for my nurse practitioner starting this fall. So far, so good.
Great, great. And Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I graduated from Sage with my biology in 2014 and my physical therapy doctorate in 2016. I live out in Worcester, Mass. and work at Fairlawn Rehab Hospital. So I work pretty much with people who need a little bit more hands-on assistance and working on getting themselves moving a little bit better after usually something traumatic like a brain injury, stroke, car accident, something where they physically aren't safe to go home yet. So they come and work with us so they can get better.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Michelle. Okay, so we're gonna go into our first question. So did you know what you wanted to do before you went to college? And while you were at college, did that change and why? And Angela, if you wanted to maybe start us off.
Sure. So I was a transfer student into Sage, and I am the perfect case of not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to go to college, but when I got there, I still wasn't quite sure. I changed my major a couple times, and once I kind of figured out what I wanted to do, I found Sage, and because they had an interior design program, so I feel like I'm the kind of perfect case of I'm not quite sure, but once I figured it out, I love my job and I love what I do. And yeah.
How did you figure it out? If I could ask you a follow-up.
Sure. So interior design in itself as a profession is kind of a gray area. The general public kind of thinks it's all paint colors and fabric, but it's actually a really, it's quite technical. Your drafting skills and general construction, and it is problem solving, it is collaborating, it is designing on how you want something to look and how it's built. And I really liked that, and I didn't realize that I really liked this, but I really like the fine detail of designing something, whether it's millwork, a reception desk, a host station in a restaurant, ceiling designs, flooring designs, and in general, how people move through space. I knew that I enjoyed being in pretty spaces because they give you this sense of, you always want to stay there longer. And I wanted to be part of that experience and how to encourage and influence others while they're in a space. So particularly for my line of work, where we're working on behavioral health hospitals, we're creating spaces that are not only safe for patients so they're not harming themselves or potentially others, but also create a space that that they can heal and they can rehabilitate and then re-enter society. And I genuinely enjoy that aspect of my work in encouraging the wellness of others, because it's creating an experience.
Great, great. And I'm just curious. I'm gonna keep asking you all this. Like, was there a moment when you like had this aha moment? Like, that's what I should do. Like, that's what I should major in.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I was told, oh, we don't have that here. You should go to Sage. and I did. And graduating in 2010, it was a large class, and now it's kind of gotten smaller and smaller, but it is I don't want to say intense, but it is very driven. That when you're an interior designer, you're not just designing spaces. You're also dealing with graphics. You have to be good at graphics and the whole Adobe suite. But you also have to be a good communicator and good with people and good with just working with your peers, because sometimes there's working on a residential project versus a commercial project is different, because it's a different client. So at times working with residential clients, you almost become a mediator, where in commercial projects, you also become a mediator, but on a larger scale. The buildings are larger, the projects are larger. You're typically working for a board of people, so there's quite a few decision makers, but you're working on a larger scale to have a common goal of creating something that's enjoyable and within budget, which is also part of it, being able to create budgets so people understand if they're over or under, and how to pull back on a project if it's over budget. It's always a topic.
Thanks. What about you, Kim? Did you know what you wanted to do before you went to Sage?
So yeah, unlike Angela, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to be an attorney. I grew up in Jamaica, and a lot of parents say, "Oh, you talk so much. You're definitely going to be an attorney." So that was kind of engraved in me. So I went in there. My major was law and society. I didn't know what type of law I wanted to practice, but I did take a lot of criminology, sociology, psychology classes. And really drew me towards a criminal mind frame, right? So I went in there knowing that I wanted to be an attorney, but Sage really helped me focus on attaining that goal, because I didn't know any attorneys. I only saw them on TV, and my parents telling me that I talk so much that I should be an attorney. So I went in with that mindset, but then, going through the 4 years, and I know you have some other follow-up questions later on about what really steered your way into the practice that you are now. But yeah, so I went in knowing what I wanted to do, and, stayed on that course.
Okay, great, great. So next question, what tips do you have for students that aren't sure or sure of what they want to do? So Anthony, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. I've actually got 3 tips if you were not sure. The first one is not to panic. So similar to Angela, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do when I went to college. I'm now been working for almost 2 years, and I still don't know what's next. I don't want to be doing what I'm doing right now for the rest of my life. And I think that that's something that's changing more every day. I think the days of having sort of one job from when you graduate up until you retire are gone. And so with that, I think there's a lot of flexibility in, what you do, whether you change, the role you're in or the function, or if it's the company, or even moving to a completely different industry. I think that happens a lot more frequently. So if you don't know or you're not sure, don't panic. You've got plenty of time to figure it out. And there's also, you'll have lots of options as to what you can do. Secondly, I think keeping an open mind is important. For myself personally, there's a lot of things that I look at and I think, I don't want to do that. I wouldn't be good at it, or I wouldn't like it. And you really don't know until you try it. And if you just have a closed mind, you could turn away from something that you'd either be very energetic and passionate about, or even very, very good at, just because you think you may not like it. And again, I think a lot of the skills and competencies that you can learn throughout your professional career are transferable to completely different fields. So I think that just keeping an open mind if opportunities come up to trying something new is the best way to find out, like, you know, what it is you'd like to do. And then the last thing, and this one may be a little bit odd, but if you're not sure what it is you want to do, try to think more of what you kind of want from what you do, if that makes sense. You know, at the end of the day, you're going to have good days and bad days when you work. You know, work is going to be work to some degree always, whether you love it or you hate it. But I think focusing on sort of how it makes you feel can sort of steer you in the right direction, right? So what are the kinds of things that you want from, you know, your career? Do you want to work on a team? Do you want to work alone? Do you want to lead a team? You know, do you want to travel a lot when you work? Where do you want to live? You know, all of those sorts of things can help you figure out, you know, what it is you want to do. If you're someone who wants to work from home, for example, you couldn't be an airline pilot, right? So I think just kind of figuring out what the sort of surrounding things to what you do are, it can help you sort of, you know, point you in the right direction of things that you may want to do.
Great. Thank you. I love that idea of the growth mindset. I know that we've been talking to students a lot about that, and always be ready to learn the next thing, right? Be open to it. Those are some great tips. Thank you so much. What about you, Michelle? Do you have any tips for students that are sure or aren't sure about what they want to do?
I would say no matter what you're thinking about doing, one of the best things that I found is going out and either observing or going into a field that's really similar. I know people that, for example, were teachers, and then they got to the point of the program where they were doing student teaching and they realized they didn't like it at all. Or for the physical therapy program, they require you to have so many observation hours, because the idea of certain careers sound really great and you get really excited about it. But if you don't actually go into that environment, you're not going to have a very clear idea of what it is. So whatever topics you're interested in, find different careers that are available and then contact people. I know when I was in high school, I contacted a local hospital and they let me follow around a physical therapist and an occupational therapist. I had a friend whose mom was a PT in a school and I got to come to work with her for a day. Or even contacting people through the Alumni Association. Sometimes people are willing to have you come in and just hang out, ask questions, talk to somebody who's actually in the field. It makes a huge difference in what that actually is going to be for you.
Great tips. I know some of our students have done informational interviews, and you know, maybe after tonight, some students will follow up with you too. It's a great idea. People love talking about what they do in their job. Yeah. So I know that's been my experience. So next question. What was most helpful at Sage for preparing you for your current career? And maybe Kayla, if you want to talk about that.
So a couple different things. I worked as an RA, which at the time presented a lot of challenges, but also presented me with a lot of skills that I use now in emergency nursing. A lot of skills that pertain to diffusing different situations, emergencies, things like that. Additionally, in the nursing program, we do a capstone. So we get the choice of where we'd like to spend 240 hours working alongside another nurse. And I was lucky enough to do that in the ICU at St. Peter's Hospital. And that was my plan, was to go to the ICU, but I didn't end up doing that. And I think emergency nursing and nursing in general, my work as an RA sort of gave me a lot of the skills that I needed to be good at dealing with people, if that makes sense. Diffusing situations, de-escalating, dealing with the things that are hard and tense and hard to talk about, like sexual assault.
Great. Angela, how did Sage prepare you for your current career?
I think that the internships were actually the most valuable, and having adjunct professors on campus teaching classes, I think, was just the most valuable as well. I bugged my adjunct professor enough to give me an internship, which ultimately ended up in a job that I was with them for about 3 years. But internships just allow you, as you were just saying, Kayla, to actually experience the job firsthand and be there. Internships are great because they give you connections, and it's a great opportunity to network, because even if with your internship you might not stay with that particular firm or company or whatever, but you might meet someone that can kind of give you the next job, which is great. But it also allows you to be a better communicator with another person. I remember with my first job as being an interior designer, you talk to a lot of people, making cold calls, which is always a challenge. But you kind of get over your fear of sounding like you don't know what you're talking about, which you don't know what you're talking about, but everyone is really respectful and understanding that you're young and you don't know what you're talking about. They're really quite wonderful, and they'll teach you, which is also great, which was wonderful in having my adjunct professor give me an internship, because he just felt like he just took me under his wing, and it was a wonderful opportunity. So being at Sage with an internship being a prerequisite in order to graduate, I think it was just one of the most valuable experiences as part of my experience at Sage anyway.
Great. Thank you. So we talked about internship experience, on campus jobs preparing you. Kim, did you have anything else at Sage to help prepare you for being an attorney?
So I agree with Angela. I did an internship at a local law firm here in Albany, and the partner ended up, writing me a letter of recommendation for law school. And, he's now my colleague who, I call on for tips. So it just snowballed into a great relationship. And I would also say my advisor, who was Bobby Gorbenia, she really took me under her wing. I was that student who I went to office hours. I spoke to her because I knew she went to law school. She had a JD, and that's where I wanted to be. So my best resource was to go to her for any help that I needed. And I would follow up. To this day, I go back to Sage. Well, I'm teaching there now because of Bobby, because I wanted to be Bobby in a sense, right? I wanted to be that person who she was to me for other people, because I know that it's so valuable, it's so important, and she was so accessible to me. So I think that the combination of having her, my advisor, and doing the internship and having someone to really guide you through everything definitely helped me through the process.
Great. Thanks so much, Kim. And we just had a question I saw in the chat. What's the best way to find internships? So I know we just had two of our alums talk about how faculty helped them with finding an internship, whether that was through your adjunct or through other faculty in the department. I will put in the box about Handshake, which is our new platform to search for jobs and internships, staged at joinhandshake.com. Anybody else have a comment on internships and how you found it?
I would just add to what's the best way to find an internship. I just start researching online, and I would start calling and make a phone call. If you send an email, it might go to the bottom of the list, and they might not respond to you. But I would certainly call, or again, alumni are also a great resource. But I would certainly research and find a business that you think is really cool and start there.
That's great advice. We often talk to students about, well, are there any places you're interested in working? Like an internship is a lot easier to obtain than a full-time job. So you might as well target some of those dream places that you're thinking about, right? And also trying to locate an alum that might work there. So using LinkedIn is a really good way, and networking as well. Um, so we have another question coming in. Love this. How late is too late to change your major? Does anybody want to comment on that, or I can speak on that one, or
I
Angela?
can,
Okay.
because I did change my major 3 times. I transferred twice, and I did end up staying an extra year at Sage, but I don't regret it at all because I really do genuinely like what I do. And it was absolutely worth the extra year. So it's never too late. And I just saw on the Sage website under the interior design program that there's a new student that's 55 that was just had a life change and wanted to be an interior designer. And I think that's awesome. I can't wait to see what he does.
That's awesome. I agree with you. It's never too late. How many observation hours do you recommend having? Maybe this is for Michelle or Kayla.
I was just gonna say with observation hours, like the more you have, the better idea you're gonna have of what you think of the career. And depending on what you're going into, so for physical therapy, there's a required number of observation hours. I don't know what it is like right now. I think for me it was 15 maybe. But that would definitely be something good to talk to your advisor about, because for certain programs, if they require you to have observation hours, you want to know what's going to count, what won't. And usually there's like a sheet that they're going to have to fill out. So using your advisor to kind of help guide you along that process would be really good for you.
Great advice. Anybody else have anything to add to that one? Kayla?
Within the nursing program, the clinical hours are a set amount of hours per class. But with your capstone, it can be a range of hours. And I would say it would be of greatest benefit to get as many hours as you can, because it's a really valuable time that you're spending with someone who cares about your learning, and is committed fully to teaching you during that time. I'm taking on a student in a couple weeks at my site, so I'm really excited about that.
Great. Great. We have another question. So, which has been more valuable in your career, your education or your experience, or has it been both? Anthony, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I would say for me in particular, it was definitely my experience at work. So for what I do on a day-to-day basis, it did not translate directly to anything that I had done explicitly in school. So the theories that I learned in school, I apply in what I do, but as far as like what I do on a day-to-day basis, it's very different from every sort of example that I've had in school. So for me specifically, what I'm doing at work is what is more valuable to me. However, with that being said, I would have never got here without the education. So they kind of go hand in hand. But more specifically, if I were to want to excel in what I do now, it would require more experience in field rather than more time in a classroom.
Great. Does anybody else want to speak on that one? Okay. Go ahead, Kim.
So I would say for anyone who plans on going to law school after Sage, definitely everything that I learned in my law and society classes definitely translated to my law school courses. And I felt like I was very prepared going into law school with what I learned at Sage. And I tell Bobby all the time that those courses that I took made me get those A's, right? I was able to excel in those courses because of the curriculum that I took for my courses at Sage.
Great. Thank you. So, were there any opportunities or services available through Sage that you wish you took advantage of, but you didn't? Anybody can jump in on this one. Anthony?
Sorry, just trying to get off mute. The mock interviews was a big one. So I was not able to attend any of the seminars where you would actually like do a practice interview. That is something that may seem rather intuitive, but they're actually pretty difficult. So I've won on a few where I've not had the best outing, I guess you could say. So definitely take advantage of every opportunity you can to practice getting interview questions.
Anthony, you just opened up a plug for our office. So just if you don't know, I know there's a lot of first year on the call, first year students. Our office, the career planning office, we do mock interviews. So you can actually set up an appointment through Handshake to do an interview. So it's really good if you've never done one or if you haven't done one in a while. And, you know, every time you do an interview, you get better. In practice makes perfect with interviews. So that, yeah, that's a really, really good tip. I love that. Anybody else?
I would agree that taking advantage of as many opportunities as you can is really helpful. I also worked in the student center when I was in school, and we had to interview for that job. And then we had to train other people while we were in that job as well. So you get, this is going to sound redundant, but on the job training someone else, which I found when I went into my career is a really large part of it.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Next question from Genevieve here. After graduating, how long before you had a full-time or part-time job? And were you nervous after graduating that it would take too long to get hired? Michelle?
So this is definitely something that was stressful for me after I graduated. So before I could get a job, I had to pass the physical therapy board exams, which are a whole other stressor. And I know a lot of my classmates, because, you know, we've just spent a lot of money on school, wanted to get jobs right away. So they were applying and working as they studied, which I knew was just not something that would work for me. And that meant that I was kind of behind the ball for a lot of people. I wasn't starting my job right as soon as I finished my board exam. So it probably took me like a couple of months, but it's one of those things that I think it's worth taking the time to find something that you're going to enjoy. And I mean, if you get to a point where you're not finding any jobs that really interest you, remember that it's not going to be forever. You can take one job, work there for a while, and then use that experience to get to somewhere else. But don't get freaked out if you don't get a job right away. Kind of start with what your top choices are, work your way down the line, and you'll get there eventually. It takes some time sometimes.
Great advice. Anyone else want to touch on that one? Anthony?
Yes. So I would agree with everything Michelle said. Don't be nervous and just kind of jump at the first thing, unless you know exactly what you want. So when I graduated, my first job was actually technically another internship. So for the 2 summers while I was in grad school, I had done an internship at my company now. And when I graduated, I knew I wanted to go work there, but there were no full-time positions that I qualified for on paper. So I took a contractor / internship position, which was only 8 months. Which was scary because I wasn't sure if I was actually going to get a job afterwards or if I was just going to be back at square one. But I made it known that I wanted to stay. And then throughout the course of my internship, I actually was offered a full-time position and was able to keep continuing doing what I was doing. So it ended up working out, but it was a little nerve-wracking at first because it wasn't actually like a full job. It was just a 7-month kind of assignment.
Okay. Great, thanks for sharing. Looks like the next one's for Angela. For interior design, my question is, were you nervous in showing your portfolio?
At the time, yes, but looking back, I should not have been. because when you are presenting your portfolio for the first time to a potential employer, they know that this is what you've done in school, and really what they're looking for is your graphics and your writing skills. Being able to illustrate a concept is important, but I think that which is not typically what interior designers have been told to do, but to also include in your portfolio um, some drafting. So show a floor plan that you've done. Show that you can draft, because that's what a lot of your job initially will be when you start at a company, a firm, architecture firm, interior design firm, is that you will be drafting. So it's important to show your potential employer that you know what you're doing and you know how to render in Revit or AutoCAD and draft in AutoCAD or Revit. So don't be nervous, but I shouldn't have been because they know you know nothing and it's okay. I feel like kind of every employer is that way, but I feel like what people are really, a potential employer is really looking at is how you carry yourself, how well you speak. And as my now boss says, if you can chew gum and walk at the same time.
And that applies for any
Everything.
industry, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Communication.
Yeah. Can
right?
you write an email and
Those soft skills,
yeah, they're really important.
Yep. Looks like there was a follow-up there too.
Okay.
How many experiences should you have in interior design to go on and before you take the NCIDQ?
Sure. So the NCIDQ is the certification exam for interior designers to become a licensed interior designer. It's a national exam, but you can also be certified and licensed in the state of New York, which I've done. And it kind of it tells a potential employer or your employer that you're serious about your job and that you understand accessibility for ADA, which is clearances that everyone uses every day and you never think about, for wheelchair turns and door positions and handrails and just general clearances. So, and the NCIDQ also is about space planning and lighting design, and it's doesn't even talk about color. So as an interior designer, you have to have so many hours working in the field in order to sit for the exam. I think now that Sage is accredited, there's a certain set amount of hours that you need in order to sit for the exam, but there are a couple of exams that you can take ahead of time before your final. You can take one right out of college if you'd like. But I think it's good to finish the credit hours that you need, your work experience hours, that you need in order to take the exam before even signing up for it, so that you kind of get your feet wet and learn from your colleagues, and hopefully you have a better understanding of what's needed for the exam. But there are quite a few resources out there that can help you with studying for it, because it is it had just changed, and I could go on and on about NCIDQ, but I won't.
Yeah, and Alyssa, you might want to just reach out to Angela
absolutely
directly through the
yes
private chat. Great.
Yes.
So I'm going to go back to our questions. So tell us a little bit about what you do every day at work, and what do you like most about your field, and what do you like least about it? So Kayla, why don't you get started with that?
Sure. So my primary job is I work in an emergency department. I think with nursing, a lot of what you do is based on where you are in the field. So I've worked in a couple different settings. I also worked as a grants manager for a little while. But in my current everyday job, I'm seeing patients on their worst day. They're coming in, we're figuring out what's wrong with them. It's a very investigative, get to the bottom of things kind of area to work in. So it's a lot of fun. It's really fast paced. It's really challenging in that way too. But it's awesome because we have a great team. Really, what I love about what I do is I really love working in sexual assault care and helping people make that intrinsic transition from feeling like a victim to feeling like a survivor. And I didn't find that field until I was a nurse for about a year or so. And then I just saw that there was a class being offered and decided to take it and totally fell in love with it. So there's definitely, I will recommend to students to continue to look for further opportunities once they're in their career to expand upon their knowledge base.
Great. Michelle, did you want to add to that question, telling us a little bit about what you do every day?
Sure. So like I said, I work in a rehabilitation hospital. So most of the people that are coming in to see me are affected in such a way where they aren't safe to go home. Either they can't process information, they can't swallow or communicate. Sometimes they can't walk or even get up out of bed by themselves. So I absolutely love working with it because I'm helping people hopefully get back on track and get home. And it's just an amazing feeling getting to walk with somebody for the first time when they didn't imagine that they could do that again, or helping somebody kind of problem solve how to get back into their house when they have 4 stairs and they had an amputation, so they can't walk up them like they normally did. I will say it is a tough job at times because sometimes your patients have absolutely devastating conditions that maybe I can't help them improve from, or something has changed drastically in their life where it's really hard to imagine how they're going to move on. But being able to be there for somebody at that time, even though it can be really tough on you, is a rewarding experience, just trying to help them through it.
Thanks, Michelle. Anthony, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do every day and what you like and what you don't like about your position?
Yeah. So like I said, my role specifically within the marketing team focuses on HCP interaction, so healthcare professionals. So all of the promotional messages and education materials, field execution strategies for our sales force, all that is created by not just me, but the people on my team. So if you think about it like car, marketing is sort of the function that is like the steering wheel, and then the sales team is what actually drives the brand forward. So at any given time, I have about 4 to 6 projects that I lead, as well as 3 to 5 more that I play more of a supporting role. So depending on where those projects are in the process will determine how much of like a time commitment each of them requires. So for an example, we have a sales meeting coming up that actually starts on Friday this week, which is usually in a normal setting, you know, without COVID, a very big deal. It's where you have everybody on your entire sales force. We have about 100 fly to one spot in the country, and we do a big training for a week. Because we can't travel, we're doing it virtually. But these are still very, very large undertakings. You have to develop workshops. So working with the training team, you have to make all the decks for general session presentations. So it's a lot of work that goes into it. I think we started back in August with the planning, and we met once every other week, and then accelerated to once a week, and then twice a week for the past few weeks, and then any ad hoc sort of meetings that are needed. So that's just kind of an example of one of the projects that I was working on. And then also we have a lot of meetings, probably more than we should at some points. So on any given day, I could spend about 6 hours just like this on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. But I really like what I do. It's challenging. No 2 days are the same. I get to work with a bunch of different people, but I still have the sort of grounding and having my team that I can go to for help. So it's a lot of fun. And again, in a normal setting, there was a lot of travel and getting to work with all of our sales reps. So that was a lot of fun as well. Things I don't like as much is all of the regulation in the industry. So we're bound by the FDA, among other regulatory agencies, as far as what we're allowed to say, what we can do, all for good reason, well, mostly for good reason. Some of the things become a little bit tedious because all of the need to record everything just adds so much process into everything we do. So for example, if I want to send a communication out to all of our reps, I have to get that approved. It has to go through legal, medical, and regulatory review, which takes about 5 days. So you can imagine the process that gets in the way if you had to email somebody and then you just had to wait 5 days before you could send it because it had to be approved. It's not always that fun. And then from like a design perspective, you know, there are some very odd regulations that the FDA specifies, being that they're not artists on how big you can make brands and what colors you can use and where you can put things and stuff like that. So it's not always the most fun dealing with that, but overall, very, very interesting.
Thanks. Thanks so much. I'd like to open it up to more questions from our students. So you could type in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and you want to take off or show your video, that's great too. Any questions for awesome alums that are here?
I can ask a question.
Sure, thank
So
you.
my name is Giovanna. I'm not a freshman. I'm actually an OT graduate student at Sage. So I have a question for Michelle, your PT, right? So I was just wondering, how often do you see like co-treatments, or how often do you do co-treatments with OT?
So that would definitely depend on the setting that you're in. I know some people who work in like an acute care setting where they might do it a little bit more often, especially for those patients that require a lot of assist because they're not going to really be able to do it independently as it is. In my setting, we don't do it super often, but if either I or the occupational therapist I'm working with thinks it's appropriate, we definitely will schedule that and try to do it as often as needed. And just in that environment, we're always working together anyway. So constantly talking to the occupational therapist about what they're working on, if I can include some of that into what I'm doing or vice versa. So that way we're both on the same page and just trying to progress that patient as much as possible.
Thanks, Giovanna, for your question. Looks like we have another question in the chat from Gabriella. For nursing, so this is for Kayla, did you find it difficult to adjust from college to your first job?
So both yes and no. I found that that clinical capstone that you do at the end of the nursing curriculum really plays a role in your professional development when you become a nurse and work independently. But additionally, it is really hard, and it's definitely intimidating to be the person that people are relying on for their care. At the same time, I found something that helped was when I got my first job, I looked for a hospital that had a nurse residency program, which is kind of something that helps you transition from being a student nurse to being a professional nurse, with different pieces of education. We had like a support group, and that definitely made the transition a little easier. In nursing, you'll have different preceptors, and some are more committed to training you than others. Some people are required to be preceptors, some volunteer. So it's kind of hit or miss based on who you get and how you gel with their different attitudes. At my current job, we do have a nurse residency program, and mostly the people that teach volunteer to do so and are really excited about doing it.
Thanks, Kayla. I'm going to actually skip to the question for Kim. So this is from Charlotte. Did you need to take any prerequisites before applying to law school?
No, there's no prerequisites. You can have any major. I had, friends with sociology, art, theater. It doesn't matter. There's no specific major that you need to have to get into law school.
Great, thanks. Looks like we have another one for you, Michelle. So for internships, can you have more than one or a variety of different observation hours so you can have a better understanding of what area of PT that you want to work in after school?
So for the observation hours that you need to get into the program, they can be any PT setting that you want to do. And then while you're in the PT program, you're going to end up doing like little part-time clinicals that are around the area where you're going to go once a week. And then you'll have 3 full-time clinicals, which is basically like student teaching. You'll have a PT who is assigned to work with you and will kind of educate you along the way and help you kind of transition from that school mentality to working in the actual field. And just like Kayla was saying, the people that are doing it are people that want to teach you. Because like I'm a CI right now, I have a student that I'm working with. It takes a little extra work, so I wouldn't be volunteering to do it if I didn't want to make her experience as good as possible. And that is a really good option for getting that hands-on in different environments, because you have basically anywhere you want to work. I did a clinical in outpatient, a clinical in rehab hospital like I'm working now, and a clinical in peds, which really gave me a wide view of all the different settings I could be in.
Great, great. Looks like we have just a follow-up question to that. How many different settings are there to work at for PT? I know you said you work in a hospital. Is there a job where you can work directly with the athletes, for instance?
So there's a ton of different ways you can work with PT. You can work in a rehab hospital, skilled nursing facility, which is usually like a longer term care. There's home care, going into people's homes or assisted livings. You can work with kids either in the school, or you can work with kids that are really young, like 0 to 5, where you go into their home or into daycares. There are physical therapists that work with like different teams that like specifically work just with like the Boston Red Sox. And there's even some that work for companies that will go into different companies and check how people are with their posture and making sure that they're ergonomical in how they're sitting, or working for companies that develop technology. I have a friend who was at one point looking into just like a different exercise and mobility device, and she could have been a rep for that with her therapy experience. So there's a lot of different options, and it's definitely something to kind of search out what you might be interested in, or switch it around if you need to.
Great. Great.
So I just wanted to follow up based off of a lot of what you've been saying. Some of you have kind of touched on it, but would you talk a little bit about the importance of opening emails and responding to emails, and how much time you would say you spend doing that, and then about general professionalism? So anybody could touch on that.
Sure, I'll talk some more. In my job, I do not have to respond to very many emails, which is nice. You definitely should be kind of checking your email fairly regularly just to make sure you're not getting anything important from your boss. But luckily, my bosses are usually right there and they'll come find me if it's something really important. But I do think it does add to your professionalism to be able to make sure you're regularly checking your emails, to make sure that if somebody's calling you, especially if it's a family member calling them back, because while, yeah, I have 7 patients I'm working with every day, this patient, this family member is really concentrated on what kind of care they're getting. So if I take 3 days to respond back to a family member calling, they're going to remember that even if it was just a blip on my radar, and it's going to really affect their care. So making sure that you're promptly responding to people is something that, even if it doesn't really come across as a big thing to you, is going to really come across as a big thing to anyone else that you're working with.
Anthony, you had something too as well, right?
Yeah, I was on mute. Yes, so I get a lot of emails. I think currently, since we've been on here, I've gotten 13 in the past hour, and it's been all after 5, so that's a lot of fun. I get anywhere between 50 and 100 a day. And so they're not always fun to go through. Definitely prioritize your inbox for the people that you're either working with currently or your boss to make sure you don't miss the important stuff. And try not to let anything build up for longer than 24 to 48 hours, depending on the topic. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't lose some for quite a while.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think, you know, with COVID and us getting inundated with emails as professionals and as students, one thing we've been talking to students about is the idea of making sure they're reading their emails and staying up to date with that. And I know every industry is different. Does anybody else want to speak about that?
I would say I don't get a lot of emails, but the emails that I do get are really, really important, and usually high priority that need a quick response. So it would be something to do. Like a couple weeks ago, I got an email regarding a medication administration policy. So the pharmacist emailed me asking me, "Did you give this medication?" We use a machine called a Pyxis, which counts the amount of medications that we're giving. And I had to pull something out during an emergency. So the pharmacist wanted to follow up to get the patient's medical record number so that they could verify that indeed I did give that medication and to the right person. If I had not followed up on that in a timely manner, it's probably some information that I would have forgotten. And it would have been a problem because it was a narcotic medication.
Great. So it looks like we have time for about one more question. If anyone wants to put something in the chat or to unmute themselves. Okay, I think we got a lot of great questions. So just as I actually someone unmuted themselves.
Hi. I'm presently working on my master's at Sage.
Okay.
I love going to Sage. My program's forensic mental health / criminal justice, and I worked almost 35 years for OMRDD. It used to be Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. And I was just wondering, upon graduation, some gentleman where you register for classes told me that the state comes on campus and they do their state jobs after we graduate. Do you know if that's true?
We do have different recruiters that come onto campus from the state for state jobs. You know, right now the best place to look is online to see what is open because of COVID. Definitely the state is hiring a little bit differently than they were. But definitely recruiters that come onto campus. Hopefully maybe in the spring you'll be seeing some more of those in person. Right now a lot of that is virtual, and you can find out a lot about who's coming up on Handshake. That's where all of our events are listed. But surely you will get an email about that when there's a recruiter from the state coming onto campus. Thanks for your question.
Thank you very much. And I want to say also I was very grateful to the nursing student that when I had a hip replacement operation in January at Albany Medical Center. She said she went to Sage, and I'll never forget it. They made me a banner. It said "Happy Birthday, Eric." And they all signed it, and I couldn't believe it. I was very grateful. It was a very good job there. I appreciate it, and it gives me optimism, and I appreciate it.
Great. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Or nursing education at work, right? That's great. So just as a last thing, if you had any advice to students, we could go around. Whoever wants to answer this, if you had any advice for students looking to go into your field, what would it be? Angela, do you have something?
Sure. I would say with interior design, there are many different avenues. If you want to work for an architecture firm, another interior designer, if you want to work on the residential side or the commercial side, you kind of can, you could be a rep that travels all over the nation, or a local rep that travels all over the state and New England, and still have some influence in design, just at a different level. So you kind of can do what you want with an interior design degree within the umbrella of the construction field. I knew that I wanted to work for an architecture firm. When I figured out I wanted to be an interior designer, I knew that I wanted to work for an architecture firm because I like the technical side of it. So I would say do some soul searching if you want to be an interior designer, and think about what aspects you really like about interior design, and figure out which avenue you want to take, because it's kind of fun.
Thank you. Kim, do you have any last thoughts or advice for students thinking about being a lawyer?
So before you get to become a lawyer, you have to go to law school. So I would say you have to prepare for that, right? Do your research into various law schools that you'd like to attend, and pick a few options, your dream schools and your safety schools. Look at their requirements. You're gonna need letters of recommendation, references, and a decent LSAT score. Plus your GPA plays a big role in whether you get in or not, and whether you get a scholarship or not. So I think that students who, I believe it's mostly freshmen on here, if that's the road you're trying to go down, I think that it's important that you start planning and preparing now, because it's hard to build up your GPA when you're far gone into a semester when your GPA is not so great. So I say, start strong and hopefully finish strong, and just put in the work, do the research, and call me when you need any advice.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Michelle, did you have something? Last advice?
Sure. Like I said, observation, checking things out is definitely the biggest thing. And then using your resources. So talking to your advisor, because there are prerequisites you have to get into the physical therapy program, like human anatomy and different classes that you have to have certain grades in and certain overall average, just like you do for getting into law school. So talking to your advisor, talking to your teachers about what you can do to kind of get more experience and get more knowledge about things that might be a little bit harder for you. It's definitely worth it. I love my job, but it's an intense graduate program. So making sure that you want to go into it and kind of looking at all of your different options is a good idea before you start the doctoral program.
Yeah. Keela, any advice?
I would say don't write off any particular field of nursing until you tried it. With your clinical opportunities, you'll be exploring a bunch of different things. I know that I personally wasn't interested in obstetrics. However, when I did my clinical on mother baby, it was really cool to see a baby be born. And you just sort of have to be open to exploring. And you're never stuck in nursing. There's a million different things you can do. You can work for an insurance company. You could go into people's homes. You can work in a hospital. So definitely keeping an open mind and exploring the different opportunities that are available. There are a lot of.
Great. Anthony, any last advice for students?
Yeah, I think getting an internship at a pharma company is definitely probably one of the best ways to go about it, just because it's such a broad industry. I think so. Where I work is one of the the bigger pharmaceutical companies, and there's probably about a dozen or so, and we have over 100,000 employees. So there's literally a million different things you can do. So getting an internship and kind of finding a niche where you feel comfortable is probably the best way to go about getting into the industry. And then once you're in, you can do pretty much anything you want. I mean, we have people in finance, we have lawyers, we have nurses as well, we have doctors, we have sales reps. So we have all types of different things that you can do. But an internship is definitely the best way to go as far as getting into the industry.
Great, thank you so much. Well, we're about out of time. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of our panelists. And students, if you want to give them applause or put something in the chat, but we really appreciate your time tonight and your advice for our students. I would encourage students that are on here to follow up with you if they have more questions or want to connect with you. So, you know, they might have reached out to you privately, or they can reach out to our office as well afterwards and just say that they want to connect with one of you. And I would really love it if you could connect with our students and just continue this conversation on, because I think it's really important, especially if students are interested in your field and still exploring careers. So thank you so much. Anything, Amanda, as a follow-up for RC 101 students? No, okay. Well, thank you. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here, everyone. And I will send you the recording probably tomorrow so you can take a look at it. Really appreciate you being involved at Russell Sage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for putting it together.
Oh, thank you. All right. Have a great night.
Yes, you too.
Thank
Bye now.
you. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.